All right. Let's jump into our module of the week. And for that, we are going to bring in Martin Anderson Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules of his own. Martin, what do you have for us this week?
Thanks, John. Have you ever wanted to make Layout Builder easier and more intuitive for content creators? There are a few modules that can help with that, but today we're going to talk about one called Layout Builder Plus. It was originally created in April of 2022, and it has a 2.0.1 release available, which is compatible with Drupal 10 and 11. It is actively maintained. In fact, the latest release came just in the past week. And in terms of open issues, technically it has two, both bugs, but both are marked as fixed currently. It is officially in use by 9 sites according to Drupal.org, and the current maintainer is Tim Bozeman of Tag 1. Now, the module provides an overhaul of the Layout Builder UI to make it easier for content creators. So it'll do things like show a curated list of promoted blocks with icons, with lesser used blocks available in a separate tab. Once a block is placed, it shows automatically with generated content instead of asking the user to fill out a form before they can see what it will look like. The editing of a block happens in an overlay instead of within the settings tray, so it uses up more of the screen, and it moves the save layout and other action buttons to the bottom of the page. It also adds some nice capabilities to Layout Builder, including the ability to drag and drop entire sections. You can change the layout of an existing section, even if it has blocks in it. So, for example, to go from 1 column to 2 columns. And it will allow you to clone and update existing blocks. Finally, it includes a submodule to integrate with the section library module, which allows for a section within a layout to be saved so it can be reused again and again. Now, also note that this is a module that was nominated by one of our listeners in the Talking Drupal channel of the Drupal Slack workspace. So if there's a module you'd like to hear about in this segment, drop us a note in there. But let's talk about Layout Builder Plus.
I
I
definitely have to check this module out because it looks like it solves a lot of the little things that, I mean, Layout Builder is great, but there's a lot of little things like the save buttons being on the opposite end of the page from any of the other edit pages default. Whenever I'm on a site that's using Layout Builder, I always scroll to the bottom of the page to save and then scroll all the way back up. Although I think Jin kind of unifies that a little bit, maybe. So projects that are using that, maybe that's not an issue anymore. But I think one of the first things I always do when I'm setting up Layout Builder is write custom stuff to curate that list of blocks to kind of fit the needs of whatever client I'm working with. So having a contributed module to do that is something I'll have to check out.
Yeah, I've seen blog posts that talk about basically the set of different modules that a lot of sites are using today to sort of improve that Layout Builder experience. And so I think this as sort of a single solution that can probably get you a lot of the way there is also pretty interesting.
I think, well, first off, I want to put something, a plus in the column. As I think the last time I was on the show, I said the same thing, which is that they have an animated like GIF on their module page, which I love, because then you can just watch it and see some of the key features, which I find a big win. But also, one thing I'm always a little bit worried about when you put in content that's pre-generated is that someone will save it that way. And then it will end up on some page somewhere with lorem ipsum still there. But it's one of those trade-offs, I guess, you have of convenience. So that's one thing I'm always a little bit like, it depends on your editors. How much do you trust them to actually edit things before they just save it?
It's funny. I often have those conversations with my development team, and I'm like, listen, like we have to give them like enough leeway to make mistakes, and sometimes somebody's going to save something and it's going to be wrong, and we're going to be like, hey, you did not do a good thing there. But yeah, I think Layout Builder. I've kind of been all in on Layout Builder since it was added to Drupal, and I think like any modules that we can find that better improve the UI or make it easier to use for folks are definitely worthwhile. So I look forward to checking this out and hopefully being able to use it in the real world.
But I think there are a variety of conversations going on right now about improving Layout Builder itself. So I think any modules that can sort of explore ways that content creation experience can be better, potentially better informs, changes that might eventually make their way back into core as well.
Well, that's why I try, like today specifically, I actively edited myself from being like, well, when is this going to make it into core? Like, I feel like a lot of these features that we talk about, a lot of these modules that we talk about, sometimes you're like, well, that's just obvious. Like, we're doing all of this stuff to make core easier for people to use. Like, why aren't we doing this? I will say that since we talked about the navigation module a few weeks ago, I think it was, I've installed it twice now, and I'm like, oh, this thing's great. Even put an issue in the issue queue for it. So like, definitely like loving the UI enhancements that are coming down the pipe, and looking forward to more of those making it into core.
Yeah, I think my philosophy around this too is changing as well when you think about that. Because for this particular module, I mean, some of these I think definitely should be in core, right? Having the save button in the same location by default. I mean, on the list of things that needed to happen for Layout Builder to get in core, that's very low on the list. But it's also something that I think people universally would be happy with, probably. But there's other things too, like modals are really complex, and you might have, the accessibility guidelines for core are much stricter than they are for Contrib. And I think something that somebody mentioned on one of the last shows is that this is a project supported by Tag 1, and there's only a few sites using it at the moment, but it's probably a bigger client for them, and they might just want the ability and speed to be able to change it and tweak it as needed. Whereas if it gets into core, if there's a bug, well, now they have to apply patches. They can't just apply fixes or add features as they want. So these kinds of things, I kind of go back and forth. Like,
there's only one standard for Drupal as a whole for everything on Drupal.org, and that's right now it's WCAG 2.2 is actually the goal that we're aiming for. But it's just that there's enforcement in core, or more enforcement in core than there is in Contribs. There's more, but there's still the same goal for both Contrib and core projects. It's just a matter of trying to get people on board and seeing a bug as a bug. So just wanted to raise that.
No, thank you for clarifying. I felt more safe saying that with you on the call, because I knew that you would clarify that. But yeah, that's the thing. Like modals, that kind of thing, I think it'd be. Although more modals are coming back into core, I think, with something. So maybe we can start, and there's better support for browsers for actual modals. So we'll see. Maybe things will start moving that direction.
I mean, just looking down this feature list, there are two things here that I'm like, oh, well, I guess core doesn't do that. And I'm like, well, why doesn't it do that, right? So the drag and dropping of entire sections, like that feels like a pretty great feature, right? And then the changing the layout of an existing section, even if it has blocks in it, like being able to change once you place a section, you're kind of like stuck there. You have to rebuild and drag all your blocks. It'd be nice to be able to say, nope, this is going to be 2-column now, and I'm going to change around stuff.
I think both of those were addressed as kind of next steps for core layout builder as well during the initiatives keynote at DrupalCon Lille. So,
okay,
perfect. I love it. I love it when things are moving in the direction that I think they should move in. Fabulous. All right, Martin. Well, as always, thank you for bringing us another very enlightening module of the week.
Thanks, John.